Hi guys. Hi guys. Welcome back to the new episode of our podcast. With me is Mr. Luki. Luki is the CEO of Focus Inspired. He's a career coach. And can I request him to give his brief intro, and then we can move to the questions. Then, thank you.
Sure. I'm Luki. As you mentioned, I'm a career coach, and I like to say that I found my purpose helping others find theirs. So my background is I started in computer science. I joined one of the big four consulting firms in consulting and did supply chain transformations for 12 years. I used to do a lot of recruiting. So maybe 6 or 7 years of that was leading the undergrad campus recruiting team, doing a lot of hiring on the experience side. And after my quarter career crisis, I decided to switch that in 2015 and become a career coach. So now I'm an entrepreneur, I guess, and I work with a lot of folks trying to find their purpose, right? So usually they're young professionals, sometimes students as well that are lost and want to find what they're doing, or they're just okay, like they're living like a 6 out of 10 life, and they really want to get to an 8 or 9 or a 10 out of 10.
Okay, so it's great. Actually, I would like to have some personal coaching from you as well. Because I think mid-age crisis, like after 40, 50, sometimes you try to come up with like some scenarios where you want to progress. But I will just park it for a while. Let me start with the Gen Z. Like, what do you think are the different directions or purposes when we talk about the Gen Z nation versus those who have like 5 years career? What kind of different purposes or different directions they seek or they get advice from you?
Yeah, well, people paint a broad brush across like these generations, but within every generation, there are people that kind of fit these molds. So some folks say that Gen Z, they're very entitled, right? They want everything fast and right away. But I knew a whole bunch of people in my generation that wanted that too, and
Yeah,
they couldn't wait. But right now, because if you think about it, growing up in a society where everything is instant, you can have next day, 1 hour delivery, right? Everything is super fast and on the cloud and this and that, then why wouldn't you expect your career to be just as quick and efficient, right? So a lot of the folks that I speak to, they want to have a meaning to their life, right? They don't just want to go to work for a paycheck, right? Their parents, their grandparents had to suffer. They had to make ends meet to buy a house, put food on the table, and things like that. And after a bunch of years of being a little bit more privileged, right? The economy was pretty good for a long time, right? So a lot of folks have grown up to say, you know what, I want to have it all, and I want to go to work and love my job and have an amazing family and have a great career and all of these sort of things. So there's a lot more expectation there. And some of it comes at a detriment because folks don't necessarily put in the work that they need to do in order to achieve that sort of status. So those are some kind of broad generalities, but there's tons of folks that are amazing in this generation that work super hard, right? A lot harder than I did at that age, because they have access to more things as well.
absolutely.
And there are always the other ones that are a little bit more challenged to do that, right?
Okay, sounds good. One more question is that there are two things. One is like we ended up with the COVID, and there was an era of quick resignations, and then before that there was great resignations, and then again there
Mhm.
is a quiet resignations as well. So during this era, did people approach you and ask you about the career advice? What is the advice on their side?
Yeah, I think COVID allowed folks to actually take the time to think, right? Because a
Mhm.
lot of folks were so busy during their 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, they were spent and tired, and they took the weekend to recharge, that they never took the time to think, to say, like, is this what I want to be doing? So a lot of folks, you'll be working for the next 40 years of your life, right? So even if you're 30, 40 something, you still have another 20 years left
Right.
of doing what it is. So a lot of folks in that situation said, you know what? Do I want to do this for another 10, 20, 30 years? And because they didn't have as many expenses for the commute or this and that, they had more time to invest in learning, in a course, in something else. And they realized that, hey, I can do something else. I have access to the internet. Like ChatGPT can teach me anything, right? So there is availability for me to change, even though I might be 10, 20 years into my career, or I just started and I completed my 4 or 5 year degree, I can switch to another career path because now in this new era, it is possible. 5, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you couldn't do that, right? There was too much invested in that. But now people are switching their careers multiple times, and not just jobs, it's the whole kind of career path. Like myself, I started computer science, management consulting is more business, and then now I'm in education, right?
Wow.
And will I be doing this in another 5, 10 years? I'm not sure, but hopefully.
Hopefully, absolutely. Okay, two aspects. One is that uh, we used to have a like I'm coming from Asian countries, right? So we had a mindset. You start your career after completing the masters, right? So you need
Okay.
to reach out to a level at the postgraduate level and then start your career because that's something like MBA. You need to be an MBA, right? And then
Yeah,
change it. Things change, and then it was all computer sciences, right? And
sure.
now it's all prompt engineering that people are trying to do. Oh, I want to do the prompt engineering aspects. The question I wanted to ask that organizations like I want to name, don't want to name, but Google or maybe some Facebooks, they said we don't need the master's degree now.
Mhm.
Just need to be like more skilled now. So from a HR landscape, I think one skill is like that can change your career, that can transform the career, and that is what you can live. But down the road, if you spend like you go out for some kind of a certification, maybe for a cloud transformation, maybe, and you can good for 3 years. We don't know 3 years that will help you in surviving for another 10 years. But our Gen
Sure.
Z, they just want to just fly on the wheel. That I want to just reach out to 100,000, 200,000 K, 300,000 K in 3 years, 5 years, and they are flipping their jobs. Unlike ourselves, who used to marry to a job and stay there for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, right? And not
Sure.
still not saying, oh, we don't want to take a risk. So, how, from a career side, this career transformation, your degree accomplishments, now changing to certificate accomplishments or completion of the certificates, and then, of course, the risk associated with changing the career, and of course, your aging. How, as a coach, will you give a good feedback to our audience that what do they think like? What are some better practices, or what are the do's and don'ts as an experienced coach, sir?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack in that question. So I'll try to take it little bit by bit. So what I kind of interpret for that is a little bit of how do you future proof yourself, right? Because technology is changing so quickly. So in 3 years or like 3 years ago, Chat GPT wasn't a thing. Now everybody's on it and it'll continue to disrupt industries. And what's going to happen in 5, 7 years, maybe quantum computing or like VR, XR, augmented reality will be the next thing. And it's not really here. So I'm a huge advocate of soft skills, right? So people talk about hard skills like learning to code, learning about data, machine learning, all that sort of stuff, versus what about learning how to learn? and
Learning how
and
to learn.
having a code skill set, right? How about building relationship with people, how to solve a problem? Because you're right, like what they might be doing in 5 years may not even exist or may not have been invented yet.
Right.
So if you really want to future proof yourself, then focus on those fundamental skills. People call them soft, but I like to say that they're more human skills, ones that everybody needs to have. And if you can really emphasize and get really good at those, then you'll always be in demand.
I see.
In term Yeah, in terms of your other question of like degrees and like the masters, everyone, you need a master's and then you get a job. Well, the what folks are realizing, what employers are realizing is a lot of that stuff is academic, right? So the analogy that I usually use is imagine that you're trying to build a swim team, right? Would you rather hire someone who's read every single book on swimming or someone who's been in the pool for the past 2 years,
Okay.
right?
That's
You want someone with experience that's been
that's
there
good.
and done that. And the school system is a little bit antiquated, right? Because right now it used to be that you had one professor in front of everyone teaching because they didn't really have enough um, resources to have books for everybody. But now everything's digital and you can have it all in your pocket, right? So why can't they change it and do something else, right? So with that, employers are demanding that I don't want you to just have memorized it and be able to regurgitate. I want you to be able to do it and show me that you can do something even better and more interesting. So there's a lot of degree inflation, and some folks need to do courses multiple times in order to get their GPA up, to get to the best schools and the top schools. And with that, you're focused on the marks, not focused on can you actually do the work, right? So now employers are saying, okay, I don't really care about the marks. I
Mm.
want you to show me, can you code? Can you analyze this data? Can you build a financial model? Can you whatever it is? And if you can, I'll hire you. Whatever school you came from, I may or may not care, right? But I mean, there is still the legacy of if you went to a good school, you'll probably get a good job. It's the kind of the lesser known schools that if you just got a piece of paper, you better be able to show that you can do the work, right?
Okay.
So those are kind of the two aspects that I picked out of your question, and I don't know if there's other ones that
Oh,
you want to
absolutely.
talk about.
But can I ask if you allow me that
Mhm,
I was just hearing some good discussion at CNN, and they were
mhm.
referring that people wanted to move to the Ivy colleges, Ivy universities, but the statistics are showing that community college or B colleges, the graduates are making much more money, or they have more accomplishments as compared to the Ivy grads. Uh,
Sure.
from your perspective, is that right or is it wrong?
Well, I haven't dug into the research and all the details, but anecdotally, I could probably say that that's fair.
That's
Because
it.
if it goes to back to what I suggested, where if you are going to like the Harvards, the Cambridges, the MITs and whatever,
Yeah,
you are academically inclined,
actually.
right? And goes back to you've read all the books there are on swimming,
Right.
but how many of them have actually been in the pool, right? How many have swam in the ocean, right? That sort of thing. And if you haven't, generally the way that the colleges or the community colleges add value is that, hey, we will show you how to do it. You
Mhm.
will have a project, you will have something in your portfolio that you can showcase to folks so that they have proof that you know what you're doing, right?
Perfect.
So I could definitely see that because there is a little bit more emphasis on the actual practical work versus the
Mhm.
academic side.
I got it. I got it. But generally, like I'm a more kind of conventional and back like a guy coming from like 40 years back with 40 years 20 years back 25 years back degree. So what my perception is that the schools like the grad schools like MBA degrees, it's not only the academic part. It's like so creating some um, working in different teams, and then enhancing on your communication at the same time, having some very tough timelines to deliver some quizzes and assignments, and then of
Mhm.
course problem solving, decision making. Do you think that when you are just hitting right on the nail like a grad certificate for a specific technology or skill, how that resource who is just on a certification will have those skills built out related to strategic planning or business decision making or problem solving?
Yeah, and if I can, I guess paraphrase your question, it sounds a little bit more like for the folks that are in these programs, right? There's the education part, the stuff that you get in class, and then there's all the experiences outside of it, like the teamwork side, that sometimes comes in through the assignments and the marks, but is often more the valuable real world stuff. So
Mhm.
how does that factor in? And for me, it's a matter of having the educational experience be more than just assignments and quizzes and tests and exams, right? Because we talked about how the marks are not really an indicator of whether or not you'll be successful in the real world. But if you
Okay.
think about working in teams, right? Everybody wants to be able to work with good people, right? Nobody wants to work on a team where someone doesn't help, doesn't participate, doesn't contribute, doesn't whatever. Nobody wants to be on a team with that person, right? So
Absolutely.
if you are that person, but you're ridiculously smart, there's more and more companies that are saying, we don't want you because you're going to bring down the culture for us because we'll have to spend more time dealing with you versus getting work done, right? So the value will come to the folks who can work together. So, and part of what I do and working with companies is we're actually integrated that soft skills learning to, first of all, have people aware. Did you know that you do this? Did you know that you annoy people whenever you, whatever it is that you do? And here are a couple of things that you can do to be more mindful and do something different in the future. So I feel that more and more education will make sure that you have those soft skills, the human skills, the skills that are intangible that will hopefully future-proof you, because they realize that those hard skills, they're great for a particular point in time for a particular reason, but to be a better professional, better worker, you're going to need a whole bunch of other things. And it used to be that you got them from home. It used to be you got it from other places. But nowadays, because so many students are focused on grades, right, there isn't time to develop that teamwork and things like that. I'm a huge advocate of things like the work integrated learning and the co-op programs, right? Because you actually get into a real work environment and actually have to show your stuff there. So that's something which I want to see more educational programs be
No, I
incorporating.
totally can reference my own daughter. She is in the COP program.
Mhm.
I tried her level best to come into Power BI, and she was always resisting. Now, during the co-op, she has started, while on the work, she has started getting inspirations, what this data visualization is and how this
Mhm.
business analytics works. So absolutely, academically, she was saying it's a very boring topic, right? And then practically, when she's inside, she's getting inspired, right? So let's talk to the next segment. There's the last question actually for myself, or maybe the people who are approaching 45 or 50 years. Like
Mhm.
what you say is mid-career paralysis, or maybe something like at a specific age you have grown to some certain level, and now you cannot say that whether I'm growing or not. You are just surviving right now. So what will
Mm.
be from a career side, what will be your advice considering my scenario, the people who are stuck at like 45, 50, and they now how they should plan for next 15, 20 years before the retirement? And then we can move to the next question. This
Yeah. Yeah, for me, my career success approach is a very simple what, why, and then how,
what
right? So for the 45-year-olds or 50 or whatever, what do you want? Because the challenge with the first half of your life, right, up to like 22, even 30, 45, most of the decisions have been made by parents
right.
or influenced by culture and stuff that you have to become the doctor, lawyer, accountant, engineer, right? And you did it, right? You've been doing it for the past 10, 20 years. And then you realize, is this it? Do I keep doing it for another 10, 20 years? So really taking an inventory of what do you want, right?
Right.
Not what do your parents want for you, not what does your culture want for you, not what does society want for you. What do you want? And really getting to grips, because maybe you do want to be a YouTuber.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you have to put in the work to do that, right? And assuming that you invested wisely and maybe you have a little bit more means where you can go off and do that and experiment for a couple of years and do that. So that's the first part, is understanding what do you want. So the 40-year-olds, the 50-year-olds, you still have a good 20, 10, 15, however many years that you want. And a lot of folks, they're not even retiring at 65. They want to keep working until they're 70, 80, just to stay like mentally
Absolutely.
well, right? So there's that aspect. And then the why and the how. So the why goes back to, is it your parents that are expecting that of you versus do you innately want that? And if you can figure those two, the how, there's an infinite number of hows to get there, right? So there's many different things. So that's what I would suggest to those people that are in that state.
Makes sense. One more question is that let's say if I have like 25 years of experience and I've done the management roles at the senior management level, and then some management consultancy, and on
Sure.
top of my resume now it comes as a YouTuber and or TikToker, right? And down the
Yeah.
road 3 years I realized, oh, it's not working. Now I need to go back, right? So in
Yeah.
order to go back, and then I go back and say to the team, again resume like 2 years, from a career side, how the leadership will look like. Oh, guys, you just after 25 years, you just miss your focus, right? And now you're coming back. So maybe there are 2 years gap. It's not the recent, skills. You have not been there for last 2 years. You have been
Mhm.
focusing more. So do you think that will be a constraint or something kind of a limitation, or is that okay, or is it how will, as a
Yeah.
career advice, career coach, how will you advise that person?
Well, I would say it's a theoretical limitation because too many people are focused on their resumes and what it says on paper,
Yeah,
right? And if you think about the right way, at least from my perspective of how to get a job, it's not to be applying to 100, 1,000 roles. It's to be leveraging the people you know and show how you can add value to them. Because if you are helping someone and showing this is what I can do for you, right? Does it matter that for the past 2 years you've been doing something else? Probably not. If you actually think of the most successful people that you know out there, do you actually know where they went to school? Do you
Right.
know what their GPA was? Right? Did you know what their major or their minor and all that? Most people, you don't care. You just want to know if you can do the work. So that goes back to our previous discussion of what the employers are asking for. Can you do the work, not what is on a piece of paper?
Makes sense.
But if you're looking for like entry level folks, that's all you have because you haven't necessarily been in the world. If you have 25 years of experience, you have 50, 100 people in your address book that you could reach out to and say, hey, you remember how amazing I was for you on this project, right? I could do the same thing, but in this other area. Do you want me to help you? Or this is how I could help you. Then those are the types of conversations that can lead to more fruitful discussions versus this is what you look like. There's a gap here on the piece of paper. Oh, we can't take a look at you, right? That the whole resume process, in my opinion, is an outdated model, but that's probably another podcast and another discussion later on.
Okay, thank you. Let's move to the next segment. So now let's talk about from a career side, what will be your advice to our Gen Z for, we have more traction on the LinkedIn. What are your some do's and don'ts for resume? Let's start with the LinkedIn first. What should be their strategy in, formalizing their profile on the LinkedIn from a coach perspective?
Yeah, so I have a whole bunch of videos on YouTube that kind of go into the details, but it goes back to similar advice that I had for the 45-year-olds. Figure out like what do you want?
Mhm.
Because sometimes folks, their LinkedIn is just everything,
Everything.
everything they've ever done on that. But there's an expression, if you're everything to everyone, you're nothing to no one,
We're
right?
not.
So if you can pick an area of focus, say, this is what I would love to do, and I
Mhm.
have these whole other lot of experiences to support it, then people can say, oh, okay, I know where they can start, and I could hire them, and they can start on Monday. So one is the profile itself, and that is almost like your online resume. But going back to what I said about the right way to land a job, it's leveraging the platform for the connectivity, reaching out to people, building relationships with them, turning that into a virtual chat, a coffee chat, and helping them and adding value to them. That would be leveraging the platform for its intended use, or at least what I think its intended use or intended power, versus just, yay, I optimized my LinkedIn and hope and pray that someone finds it, right? Because that's a very reactive way of thinking versus proactively, you know what? If this is what you want, why don't you connect with folks and get it?
Got it. Okay. So most of the people are just worried about, our LinkedIn should be, fancy and flashy, and it should just have good jargons. And absolutely, there is an AI behind it, some algorithms behind it. Uh, is there any some strategy what Gen Z or our new graduates that are coming into the market, or the people who are looking for some more career transformations? Is there some framework they can refer to, or is there some specific strategy they should adopt there to it, or is just like just asking themselves why, what, when will help them in formalizing it?
Yeah, I mean, if you understand your what, then the rest of and your why, then the rest of it becomes pretty easy. So, I mean, if a lot of it is very contextual. So, depending on what person wants. So, I know a lot of your audience are data folks, right?
Yeah.
So, if I know I want to be data, I want to be a data scientist, I want to go the next level and go into like machine learning and AI, that sort of, because that's all data, right? Well, what do you think should be the keywords all over your LinkedIn profile, right? Your tagline should have it, your about section should have it, your experience should have it, your education should have those words, right?
Mhm.
So the typical tactic is grabbing 5, 10 of the jobs that you want and finding the responsibilities, the qualifications, the requirements, and taking the top 10 or all of them and making sure that they appear on your profile, right? And the more that often it appears, then the more likely they'll follow you. You almost need to use like an SEO, a search engine optimization approach to your profile. Like have it appear on the headline, in the about section, and in the education and the experience. And the more places where it appears, the higher up you will be on the search results.
Perfect.
Right.
Perfect.
So, but it starts with knowing what you want because someone going into data, AI, machine learning, their profile will be quite different from someone who's going into business and financial modeling and things like that, right? And if you have everything, then it goes back to the everything to everyone and nothing to no one. It's like, I don't know if I should hire you if you're both of this and of that and of that. I'm not sure if you'll be a great fit because most companies are hiring for a specific area, not someone who can do everything. And if you want that, then you probably want to go to a startup. But to really get to that, have a conversation with someone, have a coffee chat, and share how you can add value. And that'll probably be the best way for you to land an opportunity.
Great, thank you. One question again that what do you think are the major difference in like formalizing from a coach? Does folk comes for asking you for a short-term versus long-term strategy? Is this something that is being asked, or they want to have like, okay, what should I do to get a job? Is this that the only one question asked, that how I can get a good job? How can I go to this specific career or profile or designation, or how can I reach 200K, something like that? Is that a very quantitative kind of a question do they ask, or they come up with like, okay, what should I plan for another 3 years, or what should I plan for 10 years? So how will you so will you be able to comment on that part and also highlight what they should not do, like based on your so much exposure to your clients? Ideally, people or the folks should not consider these things, rather than they should give prefer to those, to something. Any advice on that part?
Yeah, so if I can make sure that I understand the question correctly, it's more like, are folks more tactically oriented where they're just looking for
Right.
help in landing a job? Or
Yeah.
are they more like strategically oriented where like, what am I doing in 3, 5 years? Or am I living my
Absolutely.
purpose, right?
Absolutely.
And there's always a mix, right?
Always
So, and I like to say that I help folks with jobs, careers, and life, right? So it's almost like a progression there where if you don't have a job, it's hard to think about my purpose and fulfillment, right? But once you have a job and you're employed and you've been doing it for a while, then you can have some time to think about, okay, is this what I want to be doing for the next 20, 30, 40 years, or something different, right? So there is a progression. And I usually start with folks to help them land a job, but that's not my ultimate interest. My ultimate interest is, are you on a path to get to where you want to be, right? And I like to like shine the diamonds in the rough, right? You know, those people that are really ambitious, really good, but if they stay there in a job that they didn't quite like, then they might not be very good. One of my earliest posts was find your basketball. And what I mean by that is, for those that know, there is a sports star, Michael Jordan,
Yeah.
right? He was one of the greatest basketball players around, right? But what a lot of folks don't know is that he started his career in baseball, right? And he actually played baseball for a while. But if you think of Michael Jordan as someone who's played baseball, he would have lived as a mediocre baseball player versus the exceptional basketball star he was. So a lot of folks are playing baseball.
Right.
So I want folks to find their basketball, whatever that is for them, right? So it's a different perspective where people, they want a job, so they want to play either basketball, baseball, something. And once they have that, they can think to say, okay, is this my basketball or is this something else, right? So yeah, to answer your question, it's both,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
But it's on a spectrum of folks based on where they are.
While you are transforming your career, uh, do you need to consider some risk associated with it? For example, I want to,
Of course.
let me state in my way that, let's say if I want to transform myself, I started with like finance, moved directly to the data, because the job I was doing was more on the data side. Kept on the data for the 10, 15 years, slowly, gradually came on the business side, became the business analyst, then become the management consultant. Now I'm trying to evolve myself as a, maybe a HR leader or HR transformation
Okay.
guy, right? So there are a lot of risks associated with it. Like, okay, 20 years of learning and learning curve of 20 years of data, cloud, etc. And now it's totally a different world. When I talk to people like you, I feel that even I'm not at starting ABC, right? Because you guys are the leaders. You guys are, the gem of the guys who have been doing phenomenally so good. Though it's a start, and I know maybe a couple of years I might reach to maybe middle of that. But when I see from a financial side, oh, I'm just concentrating. There is some risk from financial side at the same time from a career side as well. Will I be able to, let's say, if I go and portray myself as a HR leader, will that be acceptable by the market? So there are a lot of assumptions that
Sure.
help me in saying, these are some related risks if I change my totally diversify myself from maybe A to B or B to C, something like. So
Sure.
what will be, as a leader, as a coach, or maybe the leader, what will be your recommendations?
Yeah. I mean, there are practicalities that you have to be aware of, right? So you don't want to do something where like next week you'll be homeless and without food and no income and things like that, right? So that's definitely that. But some of the kind of risks of you, let's say, starting your career over, getting a demotion, or even having a cut in your pay, well, does that indicate the value you provide, right? Because there's a question: would you rather be, I don't know, making $200,000 for the rest of your life in a career that is kind of like a 5 out of 10, right? Or would you rather be paid $100,000 or maybe even $50,000 where it's a 9 out of 10,
Got it.
right? So, and this is a decision that everybody needs to make. So there's no right or wrong answer in there. Sometimes you need to take a step back before you go up, right? The analogy that I use is when you need to jump, right? So if you jump without going down, you don't go very high. It's kind of just the physical power of your ankles, right? Most people, when they jump, they need to go down, and the lower down you go, the higher you can jump up, right? So a lot of times when you reset your career, the same sort of thing. You need to go down. So you were a director at this company with 25 years of data analytics experience. Now you want to be a YouTuber. Well, you're probably making very little. And then hopefully, if you're good enough, then you can leverage the experience and the learning that you've had in your previous career to go a little bit higher and a little bit faster, right? But that goes back to the why, because if you don't have a good why, then you won't be able to sustain that for a long period, because it's hard to restart. It's hard to give up the comfort level. It's hard to do something different, right?
Good.
But if you have a
I
strong
learned a
enough,
lot. I learned that what you have been emphasizing is like what, why, and how, and
yeah,
that are the three things that if you are fair enough to go and just think about those lines, that can help you in refining. One
sure,
last question from the career side is that though we talked about a lot from the uh, Gen Z or from the resource side, you also mentioned that organizations have been your clients as well, right? So when organization or the HR leaders of the organization definitely comes to you, are they more concerned on the retention part? Are they more concerned about their HR policies, or maybe the benefits, or maybe the culture? So what are some use cases when the organization or HR leaders from the organizations comes to you? So if you can share,
yeah,
if it's not so much.
yeah. Yeah, so for me, it's more kind of productivity and engagement, right? So
Just,
if you think of like a new grad that just came in, right? Do they actually know how to do anything? Maybe not, right? So they have the potential to do a whole bunch of stuff. The other area where folks often reach out is on the new manager side. Because what folks don't realize is when you are an individual contributor and really smart at what you do, management is a totally different skill set, right? And you could be the greatest engineer possible, but a horrible leader, right? So getting people to kind of switch that and being a proper leader, proper manager, that sort of thing, is a different skill set as well. So doing any of those things, and going back to what I said about the soft skills. So sometimes it's making sure that you're collaborating, you have the teamwork in there. A lot of it is you hire a very technical staff and you want them to be a little bit more kind of softer, like more human, right? Versus just the robots. And if otherwise, you might as well just have Chat GPT in the corner
absolutely.
that you're doing. So yeah, I would often help with kind of new grad training or new manager training would be
Manager
helping, and
training.
usually on the soft
And
skill side.
does it also goes in alignment of your what is the HR strategy in terms of the processes, your systems, and the way the communication, of course, ensuring the productivity and performance in terms.
Yeah.
So does it goes to that aspect as well?
No, I wouldn't really go to that lens. I would more focus on the individuals and the
In
contributions of the teams and stuff like that, right? And more the skills and characteristics that they develop versus more at the policy level. That would be someone else,
someone else.
the other sort of consulting firms out there.
Right.
So
Okay, thank you. And nowadays, as you mentioned, that there are a lot of startups going up, right?
mhm.
So now startups coming up with definitely 80% or 90% of the startups, very few are into some other business in supply chain, or maybe in retail, or maybe in food, or maybe in education. But majority of the startups, I don't have that number, maybe 60%, 50%, just guessing out, is more on the technology side, right? So startup
Sure.
means, like, when you say startup, everyone says, oh, it's a new startup. Definitely it will be a technology. So now when we say a startup with a new technology, means that the persons who have started it, they must have have a thorough understanding of the technology. How big are the good managers, or the coaches, or maybe the influencers from the HR side?
Yeah. I mean, oftentimes the startups that you find are successful are the ones with multiple people there, not just a single startup person, but like partners or even a team, right? Where one of them is the technical person who can do stuff, and there's another person who's like the leader, the visionary, the team builder, and stuff like that, right? So I would say that the more successful ones have a bit of both. And the main reason why a lot of these startups are tech, because that's the lowest barrier to entry, right? To build a factory, to build stuff or something, that takes a lot of capital costs. Whereas I can code everything on the cloud, right? And it doesn't really take too much in terms of infrastructure with everything. So yeah, I would say that the leadership part, it's related to making sure that there's enough capacity capability from a team perspective, not just the individual person, in order to make sure that it's all successful.
Perfect, perfect. So last question is that from a career leader side, career coach side, is the LinkedIn profile much more important? Is your resume much more important? So people maybe are taking a lot on optimizing their LinkedIn, but they
Yeah.
invest a lot, much lesser in actually coming up with the right resume. One standard resume, posting it to 200 multiple jobs. I have witnessed that. Do you agree? And second is that there is a different variety of the way, the format that this resume is written. Someone stay with one pager, someone stay with 20 pages, right? And some even like 4 or 5 pages, like so what is the best practice from a resume side and from a LinkedIn side? That will be the last question. So
Yeah, and my answer would be neither of the two, right? So if you really want to land a job, you want to be networking, right?
exactly.
Because if all you're doing is relying on your resume and your LinkedIn, you might as well go buy yourself a lottery ticket and hope that you make money that way, right?
I see.
But I mean, between the two, if I had to pick, I would say LinkedIn is probably a little bit more powerful. But at the end of the day, usually the LinkedIn gets translated into a resume because it has to go into a system, right, in order to get processed. So, but
So
hopefully
your
that,
emphasis is more on the networking. So let's say I we start the job is advertised, right? And of course, everyone is trying to reach out to the VP and the director. So
sure.
one normal message, I'm just what my colleagues or my peer groups are telling me, or friends are telling me. So whenever we try to call them, oh, this is a HR process, try to reach out to the HR guy. And when HR guy, we have a process already, just apply. And most of the times, uh, I have been told that there have been some automated processes behind, because for a job
Hmm.
maybe 100 to 500 applicants are there. So that means that your resume will not never ever be witnessed by a human eye. First of all,
Sure.
it goes through a technological review that actually grabs some different jargons, and if every jargon must have in the JD is matching it, then you are probably might be one of them. So how
Mhm.
networking, when you're trying to reach out to the management, you're trying to reach out to the manager. Most of the times that is not very much open or communicated, and even if you're able to find these references, there you are shown a light to go to the HR guy. So how that networking will be much more, because I am doing the same part, my friend is doing the same part,
Yeah.
500 people are doing, they are trying to reach out to the same manager. So how that networking will help you? I'm just if you can just guide us.
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole podcast episode on its own, and we probably have to close this up a little bit. But
Okay,
for
okay.
me, the answer to every how to network question is to care,
It's to care.
right?
Okay.
Because if you think about the recruiter or whomever you're connecting to, how is that message caring?
Hmm.
And chances, one phrase really encapsulate it where it says, you can have anything you want if you help others get what they want.
What they want. Okay. Oh
Right.
yeah.
Now, this recruiter is getting 500 messages of these. Is that what they want? No. They want someone that, maybe going back to what we said before, that demonstrates they can do the work,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so there are different ways to do it. Again, it's probably a whole other episode of detail. But yeah, so I would just end it off with care, and
Right. Yeah.
make it about them. Don't make it about you. And then my approach to networking is what I call build meaningful connections.
Meaningful.
And you BMC, you build meaningful connections instead of network. And that
So
you'll
I
be much
think
more successful that way.
what the message is that um, again the communication and also the networking, what you were emphasizing before.
Yeah.
So you should be better networking with your recruiters. Don't hang up their calls, right? Be more polite because these are the people who will be coming back to you. So if you're arrogant, if you're not open, if you're not able to translate your 100% potential to them, most likely they will not refer you, right? So,
Exactly.
so every call is like a make or break, right? Is that right, sir?
Not necessarily. I mean,
Okay,
like with any relationship, you can always build off of it, right? So, but first impressions can be very big.
okay, sir. I think we are at the closing. Any closing remarks for our persons who have just started their career or the people? Some maybe some message, last statement, or maybe do's or don'ts. Anything from your side, sir?
I would just say you can do it, right? Have the belief in yourself that you can do it, like adopt that growth mindset, and actually take the action to do it would be the other part, because life is long, you have plenty of time, and you can change and transition at whatever stage that you want to.
Great. So it was our pleasure to have Mr. Luki over for this podcast. The audience can reach out to him directly. He's on LinkedIn. You can find it. You can just Google him. In any case, you want to reach out to me, I'll be able to help him connect it to you guys. I think Mr. Luki has a lot of trainings. He has a lot of career-related progression trainings that can help you in transformation of your careers. He can also help you in coming up with like how not only to uh, create your profiles, but to go more steps what you are thinking about. So I will strongly recommend, if you need some career advice, please reach out to Mr. Loki. He is a gem of a guy, and it was pleasure, sir, talking with you. And I hope to come back with another episode with maybe on some other topic, maybe the networking part, or as you mentioned that we need to have another session. But thank you for your time. It was a long one, but really, I think I learned a lot from you. Thank you so much for having on this platform.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it, sir. Bye.
Take care.
Okay.